Hello and welcome back to the podcast, We Are Selling. My name's Lee Woodward, your coach and host, and the author of the Complete Salesperson course. Today's program is brought to you by Realtair, the home of pitch, sign and sell. Today's podcast, we're going to go deep into the national challenge of lead generation. Our conversation and key learning will be of benefit to both principals, salespeople and leverage agents, and our BDMs of the property management sector. And joining me and returning back to the program today is Mr. Mark Kentwell, the founder and managing director of Presence Real Estate in New South Wales, but also the Chief Vision Officer of Nexr. And Nexr is a business of helping real estate businesses grow. Please welcome back to our airwaves and podcast of We Are Selling, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Mark Kentwell.
Thank you very much, Lee. Pleasure to be here again.
Mark, we had a great response to your work in the buyer management sector. Hence, I wanted to get you back on to tackle this big challenge in the industry right now. And Mark, as we do on this program every week, our conversation is open to the leadership, managers and principals, the real estate salespeople, property managers and leverage agents. We are one industry and we need to work together to protect and galvanise our futures. So let's look at the challenge. The consistency of lead generation is a real threat to the business owners and principals of our industry, those people who provide the environment that others can turn up and work in. And if there isn't a consistent flow of leads, not only does this put a business in financial risk or financial trouble, it also builds up upon the issue of agent loyalty. And an agent moves when they feel they've gone as far as they can where they are. As the leads dry up, so does the relationship. And for a professional real estate person today who didn't want to be a business owner, their profession is selling real estate. And Mark, I think you'd agree that owning your own shop or office today is not what it was. Whereas your own effective business unit, your team, or you and one leverage agent, this is where the great part of real estate is built. And yet your passive income can come from buying real estate investment properties that your sales skills and commissions actually purchased, so that when you don't want to continue on selling, the income still comes in, and this can all be still part of one real estate plan. However, none of that works unless we have the lead generation sorted and working for us. Now, Mark, you are like the Thomas Edison of this topic, as over the last 10 years, you've trialled absolutely everything and then built a business for the businesses of real estate agents and principals to profit from, which is Nexr. But just before we get into what you've done there, take us into that study and research of what you've learned in the last 10 years of trying to master this lead generation process and service.
Lee, I've learned a lot in that 10 years, and I have such a degree of empathy for my colleagues out there in real estate, whether they're a lead listing agent or whether they're a principal, about trying to create this ongoing pipeline for my own team members. And in that 10 years, I've had that many attempts. I think Thomas Edison's probably a pretty good analogy, Lee.
Very much so. So, Mark, you know, you got salespeople listening to this now saying, when I'm doing my calls, I'm going well, but then I get busy because I list them and then I'm back out there and then I come back and there's nothing left. And as we know in real estate, as soon as you sell a property, you wake up unemployed. And for the principal, it's like, well, how do we help you? Because it's your listings, it's your world. Just even that is a conflict of interest, because if we don't have houses to sell, there's nothing to do.
Yeah, it's part of every real estate business, whether it's a sole practitioner that's working with one of the managed back-end providers that's going to help them sort of feel like they've got a real estate business, or they're in a medium tier outfit like a tier 3 or tier 2 outfit where you've got like a selling principal and a full team and property management behind you, or whether you're running a tier 1 show where you've got multiple offices and thousands of property managements. The problem is still there, and it's the biggest problem. It's like, how can I keep my team or myself working in the stuff that is the most valuable thing that I could be doing at any given time. One of my business values is HABU, highest and best use. So how can I stay in my highest and best use? Well, it means you've got to have something consistent happening in the background. And, I've been talking about for a long time, creating your own in-sourced prospecting department that is going to be on ground or in your office all of the time. And then each person is contributing to that in your outfit, whether it's an EBU or whether it's a business. However, not all businesses have got the business energy to do that. And a lot of the mistakes I see is that the budgeting isn't done right. They see an associate agent, for example, as a prospector. It's one of the best forms of prospecting, warm outreach to your own database in one way or another. Now, if you've got an associate that's willing to do that and keen and hungry, they look at their wage, just their wage, and say, that's all it's going to cost me. So if I get this many listings, it's going to pay for itself. Whether it's a business owner or an EBU leader, this is something that gets thrown out of whack a lot of the time. You need to budget in not just the on costs like their payroll tax and their superannuation and anything to do with their leave and all the things that go with it. You've got the recruitment, you've got the onboarding. Who is doing that? If we were getting Woodward in to train them and do it properly, that would cost X amount of dollars, and it would change the budget dynamics and the return on investment break-even point. If you're going to do the coaching and training yourself, what are you coming off the field to do? So if a principal, for example, is writing, say, $500,000 in fees, because they've got other roles to do as well, they're not that 3-4 million level. If they've got $500,000 in fees, they're doing roughly 20 hours a week productive activity. Times that by 50 weeks in the year, you've got 1,000 hours in the year of dollar productive activity. So if your revenue creating activity for $500,000 divided by 1,000, you've got $500 an hour. Now, if you're willing to put $500 an hour towards training the associate, the onboarding, or the blended rate of you and your general manager and whoever else is involved, you've got to allocate that to the cost so that you can understand the break-even point. And what happens a lot of the time is people start off and it's encouraging and they keep going and going, thinking it's going to happen soon, it's going to happen soon. And then they get to a point where they haven't actually got a return on investment and they can't understand why the books aren't balancing. That cycle repeats over and over again, and people often just end up giving up and going towards like marketing products or email products or just prospecting themselves whenever they get a chance. And that's where you end up with a job that is up and down versus a business that has a consistent, scalable and sustainable way of doing things profitably.
Mark, what an amazing moment for all our listeners. Someone's got to do the work, the thinking, the calling. You can't outsource everything. And when I use the word outsource, international team members for administration, marketing, property management, we've seen incredible results from that. In the speaking area of our community and communicating that to call someone in the community, you are part of the community. And the certain phone calls that salespeople can make when warming up the data was a great conversation that we've had on this program before, that there's a time to come in, and it's the nurturing process that really is the success. Let's take our conversation into what we both learned about this, because it's actually very significant for this entire program of understanding. And just before we get into the best lead source and what that is, this cost is still an issue. So I know many real estate professionals will say to me, the company should just give me the leads so I can go out and list and sell them, and then I get paid my commission. That's all fine, but who funds that? Where does that come from? Where, Mark, I come from a different world. 20% of every commission I made went into the marketing lead generation fund, and that's where it came from. Today, that would cause a riot, but where I worked, it worked. We always had good enough warm data to be working from. But even with that, Mark, the leads that I got were warmed up. I still had to do the big part of the work, which is that final stimulation conversion. Someone isn't turning up and saying, Lee, this person needs an authority signed. Could you go and see them? It's different from that. You're getting the lead, 50, 60% down the line, but getting the first 60% done was not possible in time. But the last part of the journey is where the success is. And let's bring that into our topic. Mark, without doubt, the greatest lead source generating listing stream we have in this country comes from the purchasing community.
Yes, Lee. Well, as we're mostly aware in Australia, that a large percent of our real estate transactions, I'm talking 98% of our real estate transactions, are listed by a real estate agent, and the purchaser, the consumer, has purchased through that real estate agent, the selling agent. Now, as many will know, I've been investigating and working on and bringing buyers agency models to Australia since I started that research in 0809, and we're seeing more of that, but it's still only 1 to 2% of the transactions in Australia. So it's fair to say most of the listeners on here in Australia are in selling agencies, in sales agencies, or as we call them, real estate agents. Now, if you put up a listing, and you get a lead off that, it's most likely that lead is going to be something to do with buying it, because they are the buyer, the consumer that's looking at it. It's going to be, can I have a price guide? Or, when can I inspect? Or how's it going? Are there any offers? But it's all going to be questions about that property. And the thing is, only 5% of people buy the original criteria that they go for. 95% go outside of that. And that buyer investigation, buyer interview that we've done on a former section of your We Are Selling podcast, that will give an idea of how deep we can go in an interview sense with the buyer, and in order for the buyer to feel looked after. Now, it doesn't end at that inquiry. If they don't buy that property, 95% chance they're going for something else if they do buy. And it's about meeting these people where they're at and then getting upstream of the events that are yet to happen. And if they own a property that's going to be either leased out or sold as a result of purchasing, or they're buying one that's going to be leased out or sold later as a result of flipping or investing, if you know that information earlier, you can position yourself to help them with the key things along the way. And this is where the real gold is, Lee. It's the uncontested listings or the low contested listings. So uncontested, it's only you pitching. Low contested is they get someone else just to confirm that you're not wildly out on fee, like triple the fee or like 30% out on price, but they have you as a favorite. It's yours to keep. I don't like saying it's yours to lose, because that puts your head in the losing mode. It's yours to keep. You've just got to keep doing the things that you've been doing, compared to when you use external sites or anything like that. And they've got a part to play for those that don't want to put the time into it themselves. But a lot of those sites, they're intercepting leads. The intercepting leads your company would have got that may have been allocated to you, or that you might have got, because there's someone out there searching that hasn't yet been approached by your company to get them into your ecosystem. And then what happens is they're farming those leads out on an open platform. So the other fees that are being quoted, the other prices are being quoted, the other marketing packages are being quoted or chucked in or anything like that from usually lower ranking agents in those firms. It's going to drive the fee to the bottom, and then you're going to pay a percentage out of that. So you could end up at half the fee, and you could end up with a lot of clients that are high expectations on price, low expectations on fee, and aware of all the options they've got out there. There's no trust, there's no rapport. You've just been picked on a merry-go-round carousel based on that short amount of space. Whereas if you nurture earlier, the chances of you getting uncontested or low contested business on your terms, the way you do it, because they've been watching and feeling the way you and your team work, that just skyrockets. So that the results here are multiple times output. It's not just a little bit better to get upstream and deal with buyers early.
So, Mark, let's unpack that. The purchasing community, which is my modern word for buyers. Mm-hmm. I just like the purchasing community because they're different to what people think. A couple of factors here. The buyer is the seller is the buyer. So most people who inquire on real estate early actually have but they're only having a little peek to see what's out there. It's early days, but there was a signboard went up at the end of the street. Let's walk past that. 2 days later, they're really excited and they've bought it. And I'm saying that, Mark, because I've just happened to myself. Rob and I bought a townhouse at the end of the street. We weren't looking at all, but our original purchase off the plan didn't go ahead. And then suddenly we're in the market. But that initial peak becomes long-term. And for most people, and I love this term, seasoned data. I know for myself as a real estate pro, I would get my best leads from the people that inquired 5 years ago. And I'd just ring up and say, hi, Mr. Kentwell, Lee here from First National. 4 years ago, you had a look at a property in Prescott Avenue with us. You were living down in Tor Road. Did you end up moving at that time? They go, no, we didn't. And are you still in the same place where you were? Yeah, we are. And do you mind if I ask, why didn't you move at that time? It was just too hard and my daughter's exams were on. So seasoned data, everything that comes through that initial inquiry, But Mark, the error is agents think they're not doing something now. Well, then no good. I've got to get something today. And I understand why the agents feel that, but this is where the nurturing process, or what I used to call the babysitting process of the lead, is so important to bring it back to the agent's attention 4 years from now. And people think 4 years from now, well, if we go back 4 years and we've got 2,000 nurtured people in the database right now, would you want to have a chat with one of them? Oh, of course I would. Well, then this is how it works. And I might get you to do the fishing upstream analogy, Mark, just for those that don't understand that. Take us into fishing upstream rather than the big pond at the bottom.
Yes. Okay. So the big pond at the bottom is where everyone's playing. So just imagine one of those river scenes where you've got the salmon that have made their way up to breed. And, there's rock pools all the way down, and then it turns into the rapids, and then there's the part of the bottom. Now, the part of the bottom is 3% of the market that everyone is fishing for. So down the bottom, the water's white. There's lots of lines in there. There's bears trying to get the fish. There's other fish that have come in from the ocean that the estuary is about to drain to. It's busy there. And that's where a lot of agents are spending their time marketing to these people and all of the stuff that goes with it. Now, upstream further, there's people that are on their journey, and their journey will end at any point during that stream when they find the property they want and find the agent to represent them in their interest for properties that they own. But when you're fishing, I compare, new business, future business, prospecting, buyer work, nurturing, it is like fishing. It's so like fishing, it's not funny. Here's why. So there's 3 key factors that will determine the results of fishing. Now, I'm not a huge fisher person. I was when I'm younger. I definitely know enough to be dangerous with it. The spot or the pond that you're fishing in, I'll call it the pond just because it's easier to remember. The fishing spot you're in or the pond that you're in, are there fish in it that you want to catch? Are they hanging out there? So, for example, if you're looking for middle to upmarket buyers that are between 1.5 and 2.5 million, if that price is supported in your area, that are most likely coming from a radius of 10 to 15 Ks from there, at least 50% of them are probably going to be selling something or managing something as a result of it, just because of the purchase amount, and to have that kind of income and borrowing capacity, they probably own other real estate. So if that's a pond you're in and those people are in there, you're on a winner. But you need to know how to find that if you're in that pond or not quickly, because the fisher person will move on to another pond if they're not getting bites. So that's number one.
Mark, when we look at this nurturing process, and I think people say no to an agent, yet they're still selling, but they're saying no to their approach. Yes. I know at the moment there's a stack of young leverage agents that I was working with that were saying the wrong thing to a lot of people. And what I mean by that is it's very easy to ring 100 people, speak to no one, and you're using the wrong words. And I'll just share that approach with you. What they were thinking is, they're ringing through, oh, Mr. Kentwell, we got heaps of buyers out there that want to buy property. Do you want to put your property on the market? And the consumer feels harassed by that. Actually trying to take my home, which means I'm homeless. I don't know where I'm going. So no. Now, this person is actually thinking of selling, but the no is to what was put forward. And just for our listener, most consumers actually think there'll be no problem in selling their own home. Everyone's going to love it. All the buyers want to buy it. They'll be competing for it. So that's not a win for them. That's not the issue. The issue is, when do I go? How do I go? How do I get to the other side of that? Which is why the property advisor is what we actually do for a job. So ringing people with the wrong words and the wrong script, and then driving down the street 3 weeks from now and seeing a auction board on it, and you think, they said they weren't doing anything. They said no to your approach. They didn't say no to moving, but they found someone who understood their situation far better than the call that was being made. And sometimes that is because it's an agent on the phone. Yet when we've got, Mark, as you know, I've got people that make phone calls on my behalf, but they make phone calls to notify people of things, not actually to buy things. Just letting you know. Like Mark, you and I have got a buyer management TOD coming out this year, which I'm excited about. It's buyer demand. So I'll have all my customers rung to let them know, hi, Sally, just calling on behalf of Lee Woodward. He's just finished a buyer management masterclass with Mark Kentwell. He wanted you to know it was available. and it's now available on the store. Thanks for your call. Now they can choose, do I go to the store? But we're not saying, are you buying it? Yes or no, which is like, are you moving right now? Yes or no. And this is where the nurturing process is really, really important. And there's a time, and it takes time. And the reason the agents don't wish to do it, I won't say they won't do it, is they're looking at the next 2 weeks of work of gonna list, gonna be on the market, got to pay my mortgage, which means our best season data isn't getting serviced, getting out of date. And when they do become in date, they just meet someone at an open and they sell straight away. That's what's going on in the industry. Just too, Mark, in doing that, you had to fix it for your own company, but you're now fixing it for others. Got some principles about to go on. Let's call it your data cleansing, babysitting, nurturing system, which is your company called Nexr. That's separate to Presence, your real estate business. What is Nexr and how does that work?
Yeah, so Nexr, basically, if you think about Meta to Facebook or Alphabet to Google, that's kind of what Nexr is for Presence Real Estate and now the rest of the industry. So it's where I set up a separate company back in about 2020. Even though we were doing this, I started the lead generation for company journey in 2008, 2009. External telemarketers and everything that goes on. Then I built in what we call CBU, Super EBU, around 2012, where we had appointment coordinators, prospectors, cadets, and everything like that. And in the following sort of 8 or 9 years, I worked out what didn't work and what worked. And I wanted to keep going because my job wasn't done yet. The Thomas Edison theory, I knew that light bulb would light up soon. I just had to get the Rubik's Cube combination right. And in 2020, I made it a separate company. And the core reason for that was that there was demand for this across Australia from other principals and agents going through the same stuff as us. If I wanted to keep going with this journey, and we're talking millions, like more than 10 million has been invested over this journey, which I was piling in my personal selling fees. Now I was writing big fees, 2 to 4 million for the decade leading up to when I finished up. I was over 4.1 when I finished in my last year of direct selling. And I was investing that into this process. I couldn't substantiate doing it just for Presence. There's too much tech, trial and error systems that need to go on. So I created a white label company that could contract to Presence, and Presence would be a VIP flagship office where things get tried out like Apple do with the App Store. And then I could support other colleagues in the industry, which have primarily been tier one companies and agents so far, leaders in their field, big operations or leading agents that are in non-competing areas, by them getting to use the benefit of it and the investment that goes into the business with the income coming from those using it as well. It allows me to continue to innovate in Presence and serve other parts of the industry. So over time, we're looking to create something that nationally is a first, and I believe it already is at that stage. People can tap in and tap out of it, yet my own company can have its goal fulfilled. I want Presence Real Estate to be the number one company in Australia for company-generated leads for its team. Number one in Australia for that. Systemized, scalable, profitable, sustainable. And now if I can create that for my colleagues in the industry as well in non-competing areas, then everyone's winning, the standard raises, and we get to continue on together and go for real estate, probably 4.0.
Love it. And what I really like about this collaboration, Mark, is fast-paced learning. We've got to fix this now. Too many people leave our industry, not because they don't enjoy real estate. They just get sick of drying up, and I couldn't support myself and I kept running out of leads. Agents are happier when they're busier. When I've got 6 appraisals on a day, I've got 5 great listings this month. You know, real estate's phenomenal. It's when it gets dark, cold and dry for the principals as well. Everyone's at risk. Take us into Propel and what you've learned about the strategy there. What is it and how does that work?
Sure. So Nexr Propel is all about client acquisition. So new business for sales listings. That's a listing pipeline. Some are ready to go now, some are warm, and some are in the future in your core area. And property management growth, which are also coming from the same thing. It is the aged buyer inquiry and an aged buyer match contacts on most databases where there is that absolutely untapped gold, the upstream work. And we work on 3 core principles to do with fishing here again. The pond you're fishing in, the bait that you're using, and the fishing person's technique. So if you compare that to the real estate game, we're talking about the list of assembled contacts that you are calling is being the pond. Are there fish there that we want to catch? The reason for your call, the offer or script, is the approach that most people get said no to because they're approaching it in the wrong way. So there's a huge reason factor there that will determine whether people feel help supported and value add, or whether they feel like you're trying to tap into something and get something off them, and therefore the guard goes up. And the third one, the skills of the caller or the fisher person. Like if we compare it to a fish, there's fish in there, but if they're not hungry right now, you have to get them with something that's compelling to get them to start thinking of that. If the fish are full, they will not eat even the normal bait they have. However, if they're like, for example, a flathead is a predatory fish, it could be full, but if you pull a lure past that fish, if it's the right lure, that's the reason. And if the technique's right, they will attack. Now, I'm not suggesting that the buying community are attacking. We're trying to get them from being passive, dormant, and feeling like they can do this on their own to being willing to be helped by you, so that when it turns into something, it's a natural journey that you're going on together. Those three things compounded. You take any one of those away, the whole thing falls flat. It goes unsustainable instantly. If you can increase the benefits in those three categories, like we do at Nexr Propel, then we have a turbocharged result. And if we can deliver that for less than it costs someone to do internally, it's a win for the Nexr client. It's a win for Nexr. It's a win for the consumers that are receiving the calls and all the branding that goes on in that agency. And of course, it's a win for the agents that work there because they can spend more time in value add work, more time dealing with warm to hot people that want their help. And then they can run a sustainable practice where you can actually predict what's going to happen to a greater degree of certainty in the future, rather than this sort of break, fix, up, down model that we get in a lot of real estate practices.
And this is exactly what I want today's program to do. You know, imagine there's a waiting room of potential sellers who are ready to go on their final journey. But none of that, no one gets to the waiting room unless someone escorts them in. And when you talk about, you know, they're not ready yet, they're not hungry, someone may be interested in our preparing your home for sale checklist. And, you know, over a 6-month period, they're getting some trickle information, maybe a video clip. And then when the lead comes up, it's like, okay, now look at this record. You met them 2 years ago and nothing happened. Look at all the information bedded up now and all the conversations that have happened, so that now it's time to go in there and take them, you know, the last 3-4 weeks of their decision-making process where they feel they've got so much value from the company, everything you provided me, all the tips, everything there. We're pre-sold. We were always going to sell with you and we're happy to pay that fee. Mark, that's got to be the outcome in the future, that our industry does get the fees of value they deserve to get the work that they do and the amazing amount of hours, but getting some of those hours back. This is what you've built. And just in wrapping up here, for the companies that you're going in to help, you will go in, grab their data, cleanse that data, phone calls and information's being sent to do an audit on the data to say, you know, those 100 records sold 10 years ago. They're no longer there. What's been some of your findings? Because I know in presence, you guys are right on top of the data. So it's very different to a company that's, you know, got weeds in the garden there.
Yeah, look, for presence, we're Nexr's hardest client because we've had practices in our company like that I've written, from being an on-ground agent, building a brand from scratch with no reputation to one of the leading brands in the country. That's been a long, long, long journey. I don't want other people to have to go through that. I don't want my own agents to go through that. But because our data's been so well nurtured over time, to pick up the sort of like claiming doors that you talk about, or people that aren't already getting some sort of support, it's harder to do that. It doesn't mean we don't. We still absolutely use Propel. And it's like such a vital ingredient for our team's growth and our company's sustainability and scalability. When we've gone into other companies, and again, tier one, my own definition there, multiple offices, non-selling, or principal doesn't need to sell in order to keep the business going. They might be on the cusp of just breaking through that. Lots of property management and lots of data. When you've got that, what you have a lot of the time is more people dealing with that hot sort of in the rapid sort of stuff. The kind of things we've picked up, we've had listings that have been signed where we've been doing warm outreach, updating buyer database, filling in records, $10 million plus listings signed. We've had other ones where we've started the process. We've done the list. We always get the pond right first. So we've got to be able to find out, are the people there answering their phones? What's the pickup rate like? We've got some technology that we've built in, which has been an incredible investment, so that if it's a pond that's not got a lot of fish in it right now, but they could be higher value opportunities, it'll figure that out and make adjustments to how many rings that we make to someone before we hang up and try another number, stuff like that. So we're trying to save the time of the caller. And we've found people in there that have made inquiries, said all the right things as a buyer. The agent hasn't gotten to the opportunity to find out more about them, or when they haven't used the right approach. We've been able to uncover that in one customer service outreach call from the company. So we call as white label, we call as the company. It's all done fully compliant, every single piece of Privacy Act and referral disclosure, everything that goes with it. We get the scripts approved by the company that they would be proud to hear said on the phone. We reach out in a customer service style way, and within the first day of some campaigns, we've found 1, 2, or 3 listing opportunities. That's not a promise by any means, but when you're in the right pond and you're using the right approach and the right technique, and there's a team leader there listening into all that, and they're coaching and training every day, that's the kind of focus you need to make sure that you're getting those upstream opportunities that your competitors aren't.
And Mark, one thing I love about this, and I was speaking with one of my principals who's about to go live, I said, what a great blend. You've got your people on the ground doing as much as they can, but the fact we can record some of those phone calls and have our calls of value versus we've made 100 calls the wrong way and burnt the data. This is what's going to fix what we need to do in this industry. And for anyone listening today, I hope this topic has definitely tapped your interest of what needs to happen. And to the salespeople, this does need to be funded. To the principals, I do understand that you're in a position of, if these leads don't come in, what happens next? But it's the collaboration of all these things that the abundance will happen, because right now the dry up is real. You can't just keep throwing hours at the problem. You've got to have a system for doing it. So Mark, anyone who needs to reach out to you, they're going to find you on Google pretty simply. Mark Kentwell, Presence Real Estate, but also the Chief Vision Officer of Nexr Propel is the system and service. But Mark, I'm really looking forward to our buyer management masterclass. You and I are going into the studios to do that. That'll be our next training on demand that comes out. But congratulations on being the Thomas Edison of this process. And I'm really looking forward to tracking this story more into the future and getting some guests on who've actually gone through the experience and what the results have been.
Yeah, thank you, Lee. Do you mind if I just close off with one further point here? Look, I'm not saying that you have to get Nexr and Propel to do this by any means. You can do it yourself. It is one of the options. Grab all the buyer interview audios that I've done with you, do the categorization system. The key thing is when you're budgeting it yourself, you've got to budget in your time at your hourly rate and then look at the return on investment capabilities. If we leave associates or trainees early in the picture alone for days and days at a time, or even hours at a time, we are going to miss fish, going to miss opportunities. So you can do none of this at all and just rely on what comes in each time, which isn't going to work long term. You can go internal and hire your own person, but do the whole budgeting and management process correctly, or you can go outsourced to get someone doing this that does nothing but this. And I'd recommend people assess them side by side before they go too much further, because there's one thing for sure. If you're not doing this, the industry outside of your business is moving faster than your own business, and that's not a recipe for long-term success. So we need to flip that on its head and see which of these you're going to do, not whether you're going to do it or not. Because if your goals are to continue and improve, then you need to have that in there. So if you need to get in touch with me on this, you can get me on, well, we've got a social media that's just opened, right? Nexr.hub, I believe it is, Nexr.hub. I better double check that, but I'm pretty sure it's Nexr.hub. We've only just gone public. I've been doing this white label invite only about 4 years now for external clients. And if you jump on Nexr.hub or just get me through my personal socials at Mark Kentwell, Mark_Kentwell, then we'll find a way to connect and we'd be happy to support you.
Mark, great interview. Thank you for joining us again, and we'll be speaking to you in the future.
Thanks, Lee.